Hello, I'm going to read some entries from one of my favorite childhood books, Accidents May Happen, 50 Inventions Discovered by Mistake, written by Charlotte Fultz Jones and illustrated by John O'Brien. Let's start with peanut brittle. Oops. In about 1890, a woman, nobody seems to remember her name, who lived in New England was making peanut taffy. Maybe the dog barked. Maybe the baby cried. Maybe the woman just wasn't paying attention. She got through the first 4 ingredients in her recipe, but then, instead of adding the cream of tartar the recipe called for, she accidentally used baking soda. Hello, Emily. The result was a very brittle, yes, a very brittle peanut taffy. It was delicious, but so brittle that the only fitting name for it was peanut brittle. Next, let's take a look at Avon Cosmetics. Books. That's what David H. McConnell was selling door to door in 1886. He had no intention of starting a cosmetics company, but one day McConnell had a great idea. He decided to offer a small sample of perfume to the woman who answered the door as a bonus for listening to his sales demonstration. He made the perfume himself, with some advice from a local pharmacist. McConnell was amazed at how quickly the perfume samples got the customer's attention. Soon they were more popular than the books. McConnell abandoned the books and established the California Perfume Company, which was not located in California, but in New York City. The company introduced a line of Avon Cosmetics in 1929 and officially changed its name to Avon Products Incorporated in 1939. Buttons on jacket sleeves. Men's and women's jackets often have 2, 3, or 4 buttons on the sleeve near the wrist. But why? When handkerchiefs first came into use, they were expensive and mostly for show. Paper facial tissues had not yet been invented, so what did people use to blow their noses? Dainty ladies, sophisticated gentlemen, kings, and queens wiped their noses on their sleeves. Frederick the Great, King of Prussia, was disgusted by this custom. To break his soldiers of the habit, he ordered that buttons be sewn into the soldiers' sleeves. Every time a soldier wiped the nose of his sleeve, the buttons gave him a good scratch. Today, people are seldom tempted to wipe their noses on their sleeves, but the buttons are still there, just in case. Another story says that in the mid-1800s, men and women's sleeves were extremely long and wide. In cold weather, the sleeves provided protection against the elements, but when the weather was warm, the cuffs were turned back. Buttons were added to the sleeves to keep the fabric folded back and out of the soup. The buttons became an accepted part of the garments, and they remained even after their original use was forgotten. Now let's take a look at fingerprinting. What do criminals bring with them when they commit a crime? Their fingers. Fortunately for police, many criminals leave behind their fingerprints. Fingerprints found at the scene of a crime are either latent or visible. What's the difference? Visible prints are formed by dirt or blood or other material that makes them easy to find and easy to see. Latent fingerprints usually cannot be seen, but they can be brought out using chemical techniques. Police sometimes use a dusting powder or chemicals such as iodine, silver nitrate, or an anhydrine solution. In 1982, a new method of lifting fingerprints was discovered by accident. There are several stories about this new discovery, but the most accepted is this one. A glass aquarium tank in a Japanese crime lab had a crack. Before going home one evening, the detectives in the lab emptied the tank and tried to repair the crack using superglue. When they returned to the lab the following day, they were surprised to find white fingerprints all over the glass aquarium. After doing some research, they found that a chemical in superglue called cyanoacrylate condensed, or turned into a liquid. The liquid stuck to the body oils along the ridges of the fingerprints left on the surface. As it dried, a plastic mold formed over the ridges of the fingerprint, making the pattern visible. This new method of detecting fingerprints is called cyanoacrylate fuming. It is especially effective in developing latent prints that might be on aluminum foil, cellophane, rubber bands, styrofoam, and other plastic products. Gravity. How much would you weigh if you lived on the moon? How much would your best friend weigh on the planet Jupiter? Weight is determined by how much gravity there is. Gravity, the dictionary says, is a force that draws objects together. For example, the attraction of things toward the earth. When you drop a quarter, it goes down, pulled toward the center of the earth. When a paratrooper jumps from an airplane, he or she falls, pulled to the center of the earth by gravity. In 1666, Sir Isaac Newton was sitting in the family garden watching the crescent moon when an apple fell from a nearby tree. Why? Newton asked himself. He theorized that the force that pulls apples to the earth is the same force that keeps the moon in its orbit by constantly pulling it toward the earth. This was a new theory. Scholars had always believed that earthly things and heavenly things obeyed different sets of laws, especially where motion was concerned. Sir Isaac Newton was brilliant. He was a mathematical genius who developed a new method of calculus, which he called fluxions. He developed the laws of motion as well as a theory on light and color. He invented the reflecting telescope. Sir Isaac Newton had studied earlier men's work on the Earth's forces, and in 1684 he proved his gravitational theory, but it was the accident of an apple's falling that aroused questions in Newton's mind. The ice cream soda. Excuse me if I pronounce this name wrong. Gustavus D. Dowes of Lowell, Massachusetts, opened the first soda fountain in 1858. It's strange that the ice cream soda wasn't invented until 16 years later. In October 1874, a man named Robert M. Greene was selling soda fountain drinks at the semi-centennial celebration of the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. One of his most popular drinks was a mixture of sweet cream, syrup, and carbonated water. One day, Greene ran out of the sweet cream for his drinks. He had no way of getting more that day, so he decided to use vanilla ice cream instead, hoping no one would notice. Well, someone noticed. In fact, everyone noticed. The new concoction was a big success. Greene had been taking in $6 per day with his original drink. His profits jumped to more than $600 a day. The ice cream soda proved so delicious and became so popular that religious leaders declared it sinful. By the 1890s, some cities and towns passed laws prohibiting the sale of sodas on Sunday. For this reason, the ice cream sundae was invented. It was first called the sodaless soda, then renamed the sundae, spelled with an AE so as not to offend. Corn and wheat flake cereals. In 1894, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg was superintendent of a famous hospital and health spa in Battle Creek, Michigan. His younger brother, Will Keith Kellogg, was the business manager. The hospital stressed healthful living and kept its patients on a diet that eliminated caffeine, meat, alcohol, and tobacco. The brothers invented many foods that were made from grains, including a coffee substitute and a type of granola, which they forced through rollers and rolled into long sheets of dough. One day, after cooking some wheat, the men were called away. When they finally returned, the wheat had become stale. They decided to force the tempered grain through the rollers anyway. Surprisingly, the grain did not come out in long sheets of dough. Instead, each wheat berry was flattened and came out as a thin flake. The brothers baked the flakes and were delighted with their new invention. They realized they had discovered a new and delicious cereal, but they had no way of knowing they had accidentally invented a whole new industry. Will Keith Kellogg eventually opened his own cereal business, and its most famous product is still sold today, Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Wheaties cereal. Wheaties breakfast cereal was also invented accidentally. In 1921, a diet clinician in Minneapolis was mixing bran gruel, a thin porridge, for his patients. He accidentally spilled some of the mixture on the hot stove. The spill turned into a crisp, thin wafer. When the clinician tasted it, he realized that the toasted wafer was more appetizing than the gruel. The Washburn-Crosby Company bought the rights to the cereal. The company spent 3 years developing the product and introduced Wheaties breakfast cereal in 1924. Washburn-Crosby became General Mills Incorporated in 1928. Coffee. Coffee has been a very popular drink throughout history. Napoleon called coffee the intellectual's drink, and it is said that the French philosopher and writer Voltaire needed 72 cups of coffee per day. That's more than 4 gallons. In the Near East, Arabs would stop on their journeys to brew coffee by the roadside. At one time, a Turkish woman could divorce her husband if he failed to provide her with coffee. Saudi Arabia had a similar law. In 1735, the German composer Johann Sebastian Bach completed his Coffee Cantata, which sings the praises of coffee. Another German composer, Ludwig van Beethoven, is said to have counted out 60 coffee beans for each cup he made. That is strong. So where did all this coffee drinking begin? According to popular legend, a young goatherd named Caldi discovered coffee by accident. He was watching his goats in the hills near the Red Sea one day almost 2,000 years ago. His goats began chewing on berries that grew in bushes. Soon after they ate the berries, they pranced around excitedly. Caldi decided to try the fruit himself. Soon he began prancing too. When a monk from a nearby monastery saw this strange behavior, he tried some of the berries himself. He poured hot water over them and liked what he tasted. When he served the drink to the brothers of the monastery, they all stayed awake and alert during nighttime prayers. Coffee, of course, is still enjoyed around the world today. The people of Sweden drink the most coffee, on average 5.7 cups a day. 4 out of every 5 American adults drink coffee. Those coffee drinkers average 1.87 cups of coffee a day. One estimate says that 5,537,000 tons of coffee are produced worldwide each year.